Hi, I'm Daniel Andrews, owner and creator of the DAN Show, and welcome to my breakdown of the Denver Broncos. Now, if you're new to my channel, I just got one simple question to ask you. Do you want to talk football? Because if so, you're in the right place. It's the only thing that I do. There's this button right around here. See it? See it? See it? Bam! Hit that button. Become one of the greatest people on planet Earth. Now, here's how my breakdown of the Denver Broncos is going to go. I'm going to talk about what I like about Denver. Then I'm going to talk about what I don't like, but stick around to the very end where I break down the Vegas over-under and if I am going to put action down on the Denver Broncos. So, let's start off with what I like about the Denver Broncos. The first thing I'll talk about for what I like of the Denver Broncos is the draft. I thought they had a great draft. First off, they get Jerry Jeudy at 15. Now, Jerry Jeudy was my number 3 player overall. He was my number 1 wide receiver. And it's funny because I talked to a lot of Broncos fans. A lot of them wanted Ruggs instead of Jeudy, and I understand why. It's because you play against the Kansas City Chiefs who have Tyreek Hill, and they see that speed really affects things. But bottom line, I thought Jeudy was a much better player and prospect than Ruggs. So getting him at 15, you could have traded up. You had 3 picks in the 3rd round. You could have traded either one of them, traded up to get Jeudy, and I still think this would have been a great draft. You also get KJ Hamler, who you got in the 2nd round. The only reason I didn't give Denver an A is because I think you overdrafted Hamler, who's never going to be a full-time starter. So I think you could have got him in the 3rd round or maybe even later in the 2nd. But he was rumored to run a 4.25 at the combine. He had a hamstring injury. He didn't run. He was going to run his pro day. Of course, it got canceled. But this is a guy who's kind of like Ruggs light. I did watch him at Penn State. Very exciting player. He will make the team better. He'll probably be the day 1 starter for kick and punt returner. And his deep speed, something you do have to worry about, especially when you got Noah Fant, Cortland Sutton, now Jerry Jeudy. So I understand why you got him. And then in the 3rd round, you had 3 picks. I liked all 3 of them. I'm not going to go into detail about all the players, but in the 4th round, you drafted Albert O. I'm not going to even try to pronounce his last name. And here's the thing. He was Drew Lock's tight end at MU. And I watched him play a little bit. I didn't watch a ton of MU football, but I did watch this kid, and he looked very athletic. He's 6'6", 260. But if he ran a 4.69 at Indy, I would have been surprised. I was like, he didn't look that fast in college, but he ran a 4.49. You probably heard about this. 4.49. He looked to me like he should run a 4.89. He didn't look fast at all, but you could see he was athletic. A lot of people think that late in the draft, fans do, that you want to draft a productive player, but that's not true. It's an old scouting saying that later in the draft, you always want to draft guys that have the physical attributes, that have the potential, not the production. And the reason why is that him and the college coach may have not gotten along. Maybe it was a bad scheme. Maybe he was injured and just didn't want to say anything. He just tried to tough through it. There's 100 reasons why a player that didn't play well in college could play well in the pros. You always want to draft these guys late. So getting a guy who ran a 4.49 at 6'6", 260, keep in mind, he already played college ball with Drew Lock, so he's familiar with him. Keep in mind for all the tools and skill position upgrades that Denver did. He does not need to start. He's a project that they can work on and get creative with. So kudos to the Denver Broncos in the draft. I thought they had an excellent draft. Second thing I like about Denver is the offseason. You got Jarrell Casey, AJ Bowie, you traded for him. Melvin Gordon, who's my favorite one. You spent $44 million on Glasgow, so you have Glasgow, Dalton Risner, second-year player out of K-State. I talked about this earlier in one of my videos. It's not guaranteed that a rookie's going to play better year 2, but if you started every game as a rookie, more than likely your second year you're going to be better. So you take those 2 guys, Lloyd Cushenberry, who I think is going to get the start at center. He's your one of your 3 third-round picks at LSU. Your offensive line's better. And you also get Bradley Chubb back. The one thing you have to say about the Denver Broncos, whether you like them or whether you hate them, is that on paper they are unquestionably a better team. You can't debate this. Are the Denver Broncos better in 2019 the Denver Broncos better in 2020 and 2019? Yes, 100%. Now, keep in mind, they may get a bunch of injuries. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen, but on paper, this team is definitely better. Third thing I like about the Denver Broncos, and this is kind of a personal thing, but I have a man crush on Von Miller. He wears 58 in honor of one of his favorite players, which is Derek Thomas. And I urge, if Von Miller, if there's any way you could hear this, if you notice Derek Thomas's best friend in Kansas City is a guy by the name of Neil Smith. Neil Smith, the last 2 years, left Kansas City to go to Denver, and he ended up winning 2 Super Bowls. Vaughn, come to Kansas City, win some Super Bowls. I'm a big Von Miller fan. I think he's the best defensive player in the AFC West. Keep in mind, yes, I know he only had 8 sacks last year. And yes, I know he came down with COVID-19, but I believe he's 100% healthy. He's going to start. He's going to be fine. And I think he's going to have a big year, especially with Bradley Chubb coming back and some of the free agents Denver added. He is still the best defensive player in the AFC West, but he could retire today and still be a Hall of Fame caliber player. Fourth thing and final thing I like is a player that went to the same high school, not at the same time, and that's Drew Lock. It's kind of cool that your quarterback for the Denver Broncos is from Kansas City and grew up watching the Chiefs. When he came to Kansas City and started at Arrowhead, I think he had something like 300 fans, and it was kind of cool. I mean, yes, I wanted him to fail, but it's kind of cool that a local kid is an NFL quarterback and a quarterback of a rival. But out of everything that Broncos fans are excited about for 2020, the number one thing Broncos fans are excited about is Drew Lock, and they should be. He looks like a franchise quarterback. They ended up, he started the last 5 games of the season. He went 4-1. Before that, they were 3-8. I had to do my math real fast. So Broncos fans should be very excited. Looks like they have a franchise quarterback. Can you guarantee that? No, but he looks like he has all the tools. He looked good in college. He looked good in the time leading up to the draft. So just to recap what I like about the Denver Broncos, they think they had a great draft. I gave them a B+. They would have gotten an A. I thought Hamler was overdrafted. You could have got him in the 3rd round. That would have given you an A. Free agent acquisitions, this team got better. Vic Fangio's kind of putting his staple on the defense. If you look here, Jarrell Casey. If you don't know who Jarrell Casey is, he's a player who's way past his prime, but one of the best interior defensive linemen you'll find. Add some size to this defense so those linebackers can get a better pass rush. And then Von Miller, player I've always had kind of a man crush on, even though he is a Bronco. And then, of course, your franchise quarterback, Drew Lock. So now let's talk about what I don't like about the Denver Broncos. First thing I don't like about the Denver Broncos is the offensive line situation, specifically Garrett Bowles. I loved when they drafted Bowles out of Utah, but he's been a bad player. And even people that support having Bowles as starting left tackle say the same thing, and they say he's getting better. And when you talk about an NFL player getting better, it means he's not good. Bottom line, and this was a good draft for offensive tackle. So you had the ability to draft an offensive tackle. You had an ability to replace him, because the way that the Denver Broncos are building this team, it looks like a Ferrari with a Ford Focus engine. I mean, they got some good skill position talent, but you know, the one thing about the AFC West is that they're not a team known for its defense, but you got Frank Clark and Chris Jones on Kansas City. You have Gordon and Bosa in at LA. It's still weird for me to call them LA, and then it's even weirder for me to call Vegas, where you have Klein Farrell, who was the 4th overall pick, and I think his name was Max Williams, the 4th round pick who had 10.5 sacks. You have pass rushers, and then you got a real weak spot on the tackles of the Denver Broncos. Juwan James, you gave a lot of money to. He couldn't stay healthy. I have a Detroit Lions following. I've been on the Luke G. Field Review show twice. They talk Detroit Lions. So when they signed Glasgow to $44 million from Detroit, I asked every single Detroit fan I could find. I was like, hey, what's this Glasgow guy? And they're like, we didn't know he was worth $44 million. Not one Detroit Lions fan said to me, hey, we lost Glasgow, we're in trouble. This is just a guy. So it's another move that Juwan James wasn't worth big time money, and he couldn't stay healthy. Glasgow Lions fans are telling me this is just a guy. So you spent a lot of money on the offensive line. You had a chance to replace Garrett Bowles in the draft. You didn't take it. So, Drew Lock's a player that they're very excited about. You should have done more to protect him. The offensive line is a big question mark. Now, keep in mind, Glasgow's going to play one guard spot. You drafted this kid Cushenberry, who I think will be an improvement, but there's still some problems on this offensive line. Second thing I don't like is the Drew Lock hype. Now, keep in mind, if you're a Denver fan, should you be excited? Sure. But take a look at these numbers. His numbers aren't better than Flacco's. Flacco's 65.3 completion percentage. Drew Lock 64.1. Now, Drew Lock did throw for one more touchdown than Flacco in 3 less games, but in 5 games he threw 7 touchdowns. Denver Broncos quarterbacks threw for 16 touchdowns as an NFL worst. But in 5 games, Drew Lock threw for 7 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. That's not really good. I mean, the 3 interceptions isn't bad, but 7 touchdowns? That would give you about 22 touchdowns in a regular season. That's something Mahomes does in like 4 or 5 games. 204 yards per game for Lock, and Flacco 227.8. Now, and Joe Flacco was public in how much he hated this offense. He got a new offensive coordinator, but keep in mind, for the hype around Drew Lock, they really kept him handcuffed, and they really just wanted him to run the ball. All right, I know this because I'm looking at the numbers here. I'm looking at 156 attempts and 100 completions in 5 games. That means he's basically 20 out of 31. NFL quarterbacks rarely throw for 30 or 31 passes a game. The reason why Drew Lock did that is they were trying to protect him. They wanted to run the ball, play ball control, use their defense, which is the way that I thought that they were building the team, which brings me to the third thing that I really don't like about the Denver Broncos is that when they approached free agency, they signed Jarrell Casey, one of my favorite players. They signed him to help build on the defense, even though he's past his prime. Doesn't matter. What's his size and athleticism, he will help. $44 million for Glasgow, and then you signed Melvin Gordon, which is really a good move because you take away one of the Chargers' key pieces and you add them to yourself. And you already got Philip Lindsay, who's already 1,000-yard running back, really, really good player, underrated player. But I really thought that you're going to do what the Chargers look like they're going to do, and that's, okay, you're trying to chase Kansas City, so you know you're not going to win a shootout, so let's build a defense to counter the offense. You bring in Bradley Chubb back, you add some more size to the defensive line, so build a defense to counter this really good offense. That makes a lot of sense to me. You get a bigger running back, bigger than Lindsey, and he's not. You want to debate who's the bigger name. You could. I think Gordon's a bigger name, but anyway, you build up the offensive line, you get a running back, you build up the defensive line, you add some pieces in the secondary. All right, we're going to match Kansas City's great offense with a good defense, solid running game. We're going to play ball control and good defense. I'm an old school coach. That made sense. Then you go into the draft and you use your first 2 picks on wide receivers. And if you're playing a ball control offense that doesn't throw the ball a lot, why the hell are you drafting a guy like KJ Hamler? So, okay, well, KJ Hamler is going to help on special teams. So that brings up my point. So you're using a 2nd-round pick on a guy who's going to return punts and kicks? That's a smart move. So here you are. You draft a receiver in round 1 and round 2. You get a tight end with sub 4.5 speed. So now you're trying to win shootouts. So what are you doing? Are you trying to win a shootout with Kansas City, or are you trying to play ball control and defense? Because you really can't do both. And if that's the scheme that you're having, like, well, 1 week we're gonna run the ball and play ball control. 1 week we're just going to line up 4 or 5 wide, try to win shootouts. Because I'm going to tell you this, if you're trying to win a shootout with Kansas City, you will never win a shootout with Kansas City. As much as I think Drew Lock can be a good quarterback, he's not Patrick Mahomes. As KJ Hamler, even if he lives up to all the hype, he's never going to be as good as Tyreek Hill. He's just not. And Noah Fant may eventually be better than Travis Kelce. He won't this year. Eventually he may be, but Here's the thing, it's just a weird plan and it's a weird fit because Elway's been criticized in the past and some of it's been well-deserved. Fangio's an old school coach. He's an old linebackers coach. I know for a fact he didn't want to draft a bunch of wide receivers and line up 4 or 5 wide and throw the ball around. That's not his style. His style, ball control, defense, and then Elway drafts a bunch of receivers. So, and by the way, Denver has been to 2 Super Bowls rather recently. One, they had one of the greatest offenses of all time. They lost. 2, they had a defense which stifled the MVP at quarterback, and they win the Super Bowl. So it seemed more likely that that's how you would build a team. And then you draft a bunch of receivers and a tight end who runs 4.49. So I'm a little confused on what Denver's trying to do. It doesn't seem like Fangio and Elway are on the same page or that they're meshing together right. And it seems like what Denver's trying to do is a little confusing to themselves. So just kind of to recap the 3 things I don't like. I don't like the offensive line situation. Bowles has to take a massive step up. But, I mean, if he hasn't already, what makes you think he's going to this year? The Drew Lock hype. It's good that you should be excited about him, but a lot of people feel like you got a quarterback who's going to lead you to the promised land already. No, he's still a work in progress. And number 3, I'm going to call it the plan, but I kind of question Elway Fangio marriage. It just seems like they're on 2 different pages. I'm a little confused on what Denver's going to want to do on offense because you have a team that looks like they're going to build an old school offense, and then they draft a bunch of wide receivers and a tight end runs 4.49. So it's a little confusing. But what did I say? I said stick around to the very end while still going to talk about the Vegas over-under. And if I am going to put action down on the Denver Broncos, the line is 7.5. And out of all the teams I've done so far, this is the only one that both teams are negative. And when I say that, the over is negative 115 and the under is negative 105. Every other team has been 1 positive and 1 negative. But bottom line, point spreads work out where it usually starts at the over and under negative 110, and then they'll fluctuate depending on, I had some weird pop-up here. They'll fluctuate on depending on the general public and their betting patterns. So to me, it looks like there's equal amounts of betting over and under. And right now, the over slightly more than the under. But the over is 7.5. It's negative 115. And I definitely think that's the play. There's a lot to like about the Denver Broncos. I don't like the tackle situation, but if Juwan James can live up to the hype and Bowles can just play mediocre, this team can win over 7.5 games. Even if you get to 8-8, you have an opportunity to go ahead and win this bet. I am going to put action on the Denver Broncos. I'm not a big fan of negative 115, so I may not put a lot down on the Broncos, but I am going to take the over because just like the Raiders, I think that this is a team that could go to the playoffs. I think the Raiders are slightly better, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Raiders and the Broncos both end up in the playoffs this year. Neither one of these teams are ready to compete with Kansas City, but both these teams could be playoff teams. There's a lot to like about the Denver Broncos. So I am putting action on Denver, and I am taking over 7.5. So listen, I want you to have a fantastic weekend. Drop a comment below. Let me know how I did. Do not forget to give me a thumbs up, even though I am a Chiefs fan. Give me a thumbs up anyway. Share this video with your friends. Have a great weekend. Monday, I will be breaking down the Atlanta Falcons. So, hey, have a fantastic weekend. I will see you Monday.